We're always told the biggest hurdle in AI is the technology. The fancy algorithms, the massive models. But what if the number one reason most AI projects actually fail has nothing to do with code at all? What if it's a budgeting problem? Well, today we're going to dig into exactly why that is, and more importantly, how you can fix it. Let's get into it.
The AI race is definitely on, and everybody is spending big. A recent Deloitte survey found that a whopping 85% of companies boosted their AI investment last year. And get this, they're not slowing down. 91% are planning to spend even more in the next 12 months. So the money is pouring in, the ambition is there, but this is where the plot thickens.
And this slide right here, this is the core of the problem. For most of the tech projects we do, we expect to see our money back, a return on that investment, in about 7 to 12 months. That's pretty standard. But with AI, oh boy, that timeline gets stretched way, way out. We're talking 2 to 4 times years to see a decent return. This huge gap, this is what we call the payback paradox, and it is the reef on which most AI strategies crash. To really understand why this happens, you've got to think of AI costs like an iceberg. What we see on paper, the part that's easy to budget for, that's just the tiny little tip poking out of the water. Let's start there. Right. These are the usual suspects. Everyone plans for these. You've got your software licenses, your cloud server fees, the salaries for your super smart data scientists, and of course, the initial fees to get the thing built. These are the line items that look nice and neat on a budget proposal. They seem totally manageable. But, and this is a big but, here's the really uncomfortable truth. All those costs we just listed, they typically only make up about 20% of what you'll actually end up spending. Yeah, you heard me right. A full 80% of the real cost of your AI project is lurking just beneath the surface, completely off the books of most initial budgets. Okay, so let's take a deep breath and dive below the waterline. This is where we find the huge, hidden expenses that quietly sabotage most AI projects before they ever get a chance to deliver any real value. Now this is probably the biggest shock for most leaders. We all think AI projects are about building the cool, complex model, right? But look at this. That's only about 30% of the actual work. The overwhelming majority of the time, the effort, the money, a massive 70%, is spent just getting the data ready. We're talking cleaning it, labeling it, organizing it, all the boring stuff that has to happen before a single line of AI code even gets written. And hey, don't just take it from me. Arvind Krishna, the CEO of IBM, famously said that about 80% of the work in an AI project is just data prep. People in the industry call this the data tax. It's the completely unglamorous, super time-consuming grunt work that you have to pay before any of the magic can even start. And that data tax is just the beginning, I'm afraid. The hidden costs start to pile up. For instance, when you go from a small pilot to full production, your cloud cost can easily jump by 10 times. Then you've got maintenance. You should plan to spend 15 to 20% of your initial cost every single year just keeping the model alive and well. Add in the nightmare of integrating with your old, clunky systems, making sure you're compliant, and, this is a big one, actually getting your people to use the new tool. Any one of these can blow up a budget all by itself. Okay, so the problem is pretty clear. The way we budget for AI is fundamentally broken. So what's the fix? Well, we need a better map. We need one that translates all this tech spending into a language the business actually speaks, the language of value. Because at the end of the day, this is the only question that really, truly matters to the people holding the purse strings. They don't care about model accuracy scores. Your CFO wants to know one thing. What was the return? Our entire approach has to be built around answering this simple question. The key to doing this is a concept called cloud unit economics. It sounds a little technical, but it's a really simple and powerful idea. Think of it this way. You don't just look at your total grocery bill at the end of the month, right? You think about the cost per meal. It's the same idea here. Instead of just looking at your total cloud bill, you start measuring your costs against a real business metric, like what's our cost per transaction or cost per new customer. You tie every single dollar you spend to a unit of value. Right now, in most companies, the conversation sounds like this. The finance team sees the cloud bills shot up, and they march over to engineering and ask why. It's a question that just leads to everyone getting defensive because a rising bill isn't always a bad thing. It could mean your business is growing. This question doesn't give you any real insight at all. Now let's reframe that using unit economics. Is our cost per transaction rising or falling? See, That is a much better question. If your total bill went up, but your cost to serve each customer went down, that's fantastic. That's a sign of efficient growth. This question completely shifts the conversation away from just raw spending and toward business efficiency. So with this new mob, this new way of thinking, we can finally start measuring the things that really matter. We can get a clear, honest picture of our AI investment's health. So how do we actually calculate the ROI? Well, the formula itself is pretty standard, but for AI, the absolute key is how you define value and investment. That investment number has to include all those hidden costs we just uncovered, and value has to be about more than just direct savings. Let's look at some real-world metrics that executives can actually track. You've got the obvious ones, like cost reduction or revenue uplift, but then you have our new friend, cost per transaction, which tells you how efficient you're getting. And you also have things like cost avoidance. I mean, what's the value of all the fraud you prevented? All of these together paint the full picture of value. And this brings us right back to that payback paradox. Value from AI doesn't happen overnight. It grows in stages. As you can see, in the beginning, in that pilot phase, you're actually losing money. You might see a small positive ROI after the first year, but the real returns, the 50% plus kind of returns, those don't usually show up until you're a year and a half in. And after that, as you scale, the returns can really start to compound. Setting these expectations upfront is just absolutely critical. So the big takeaway here is that getting a positive ROI from AI isn't an accident. It's not about getting lucky with a cool model. The companies that are actually winning at this know that success has to be deliberately engineered, right from the very start. So here's a checklist you can actually use. Start with clear business goals, not just some vague tech dream. Set aside a contingency budget, I'm talking 15 to 30%, to handle all those surprises. Plan for the long-term maintenance costs from day one. And please, invest in getting your data ready and thinking about compliance and user adoption before you start building. This is how you turn those scary hidden costs into predictable, manageable investments.
Because ultimately, here's the bottom line. The organizations that win with AI aren't just buying software. They're building a mature ecosystem around it. They have good data, well-trained teams, and solid governance. They build the foundation first, so their AI projects actually have something strong to stand on.
So I'll leave you with this one question to take back to your own organization. When you look at your AI budget, do you just see a line item expense that you're trying to cut? Or do you see it as an investment in a carefully engineered success story? Because your answer to that question will probably determine whether your AI initiatives sink or swim. Thanks for tuning in.